Okay, thank you. Good evening to all of you. I am CA Praveen Jain, Chairman of Kishangarh branch of ICAI of CIRC. I welcome CA Dr. Anuj Goyal sir, who is the Chairman of Ethical Standard Board. Our speaker for today, CA Dr. Himanshu Agarwal sir, my committee team from the Kishangarh branch, and all the members who have joined this webinar from across the country. First of all, I would like to thank the Ethical Standard Board, especially Anuj Goyal sir, for giving us the opportunity to host this webinar on chartered accountants and non-assurance services. We are also honored to have CA Dr. Himanshu Agarwal sir with us to speak on this topic. CA Dr. Himanshu Agarwal is a fellow member of ICI and he has rich experience of over 15 years in account auditing companies, especially in manufacturing sector, transportation, automobiles, and infrastructure sector with functional expertise in Indian accounting standards and IFRS. Himanshu sir is a commerce graduate, postgraduate, and having degree of laws. He is also a special invitee to Accounting Standard Board, co-opted trainer in Peer Review Board, and technical reviewer in Financial Reporting Board, Taxation Audit Quality Review Board, and Research Committee of ICAI. Himanshu sir is also an avid speaker and writer at various forums within his firms and externally. Now I welcome our branch secretary, CA Akhilesh Sharma, to give us the introduction of our own CA Dr. Anuj Goyal sir. Thank you. Akhilesh, are you there, Akhilesh?
Sorry, am I audible to right now?
Yes, please continue.
Thank you, Chairman sir, and thank you the ESB board to honor to organize this event, and we are thankful to you so we can host this program, and we also thank to Dr. Anuj sir, who is a very jolly nature person and a very vast experience chartered accountant. He'll be joining us very soon. For today's scenario, this event, this webinar is also helpful. So I hand it over to I hand it over to the session to Himanshu Agarwal sir. Sir, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Parveen ji for introduction and Akhilesh ji. First of all, I would like to thank to the Ethical Standard Board to organize this uh, uh, knowledgeable session, and also I would like to thank Ethical Standard Board to take the lots of initiative during the current year to revision of the code of ethics, to launch of the CA Connect portal, and lots of other initiative and conducted lots of program and the webinar during the year in the leadership of Dr. C. Anuj Goyal. Uh, so, can we start, sir?
Yes, sir, please.
Yeah, just I need to. Sir, can you allow me to present the screen? So my screen is visible?
Yes, sir, it's visible, sir.
Yeah. So today's topic is a non-assurance service for the chartered accountant. Actually, for the practice, this is a very, very important topic. And this is agenda for the day. Like first, we'll discuss the background, then the provision under the Chartered Accountant Act and the Chartered Accountant Regulation 1988. Then we'll discuss the Section 154 of the Companies Act. Then provision under the Code of Ethics. Then conclusion, and we'll take the question and answer round. So before going to the technical aspect, first I would like to set the background and introduce who are the regulator in the India, who is controlling the auditor right now. Quality Review Board, the setup by the Ministry of Corporate Affairs under the preview of the Chartered Accountant Institute of ICI, and right now after the introduction of the NFRA, Quality Review Board doing the review of the private limited company and issuing their annual reports for the quality of the audit and the improvement required. The second highest authority in the country is a NFRA, issuing advisory to the all firms, reviewing the listed companies' annual reports and issuing their findings and imposing the penalties and as per their own act. The third one is the regulated by the Code of Ethics issued by the ICAI only. Section 144 of the Companies Act, because actually we are discussing the non-assurance service. That's why I've mentioned the Code of Ethics and the Section 144 also. And also the Financial Reporting Review Board of the ICAI, FRRB. So FRRB also reviewing the annual reports and of the listed and the private limited company are issuing advisory to the firm. The last one is the IFIARA, International Forum of the Independent Audit Regulation. This is the international body, and among more than hundreds company regulator part of the IFIARA. Even the NFRA is also part of this body, and they issuing their annual quality report regarding to improvement the audit practice across the world. If I read the few recent reports issued by the NFRA regarding, and this is the just finding regarding the non-audit service. So these are the few findings I will read out here. Auditor provided non-audit service including promoters' family relationship of the related firms, indicating of self-interest and family trait. This is I took from the Coffee Day Enterprise Limited. The engagement partner audit firm. In the second finding was that the engagement partner's daughter were also part of the partner of the other firm, and she providing the service of that firm also, that companies also. So there is the father and the daughter both were provided service to the company from the different firm. So this was not allowed under the Code of Ethics and the Companies Act. So NAFRA pointed out that also. And the third one is auditor provided management service like accounting advisory under Indian GAAP, tax services, related services. Apart from the audit, other service provided to the company. This is case from the Island Financial Service Limited. And if I see the penalties imposed by the NFRA, imposition of the monetary penalty of the INR 1 crore rupees up to the upon firm, in addition to the firm were debarred from the period of 2 years from being an external or internal audit. So these kind of the penalties imposed by the NFRA. The imposition of the monetary penalty of 5 lakhs to 25 lakhs upon the signing partner, or he was debarred for the period of 5 year or 7 year being appointed as the external or internal audit. So NFRA, the highest body of the country, also having a focus on the non-assurance service provided by the auditor. So that's why after the introduction of the Companies Act, the Section 144, after the introduction of the NAFRA, the practicing chartered accountant need to very careful while providing any non-audit service to the audit client. Now we come to the section regulation provided under Chartered Accountant Act or the Chartered Accountant Regulation 1988. First, we need to find out who is the chartered accountant in the practice. Section 2.2 of the Act terms that to be in practice has defined as follow. A member of the institute shall be deemed to be in practice when individually or in partnership with chartered accountant in practice, or in partnership with a member of such other recognized profession as may be prescribed, like with the partnership with the CS or CWA, as may be prescribed by the council, is in a consideration of the remuneration received or to be received, engage himself is in a practice of accountancy, offer to perform services involving the auditing, verification of the financial transactions, books, accounts or record, or preparation, verification of certification of financial accounting and related statement, or hold himself out to the public as an accountant. The third one, rendered professional service or assisted in doubt manner of principle or detail related to accounting procedure or the recording, presentation or certification of financial fact or data, And fourth one is rendered such other services in opinion of the council or may be rendered by the chartered accountant in practice. So this is the definition given under the Act for chartered accountant, who is the chartered accountant in practice. And if you read the fourth one, rendered such other services, because actually if I read the first three services, these mainly to the related to the assurance and assurance related service. But the fourth one is rendered such other services like the non-assurance services. And the last one is the associate or fellow. This is the explanation given in the Act, like the member who is a salaried employee of the chartered accountant firm. So he is deemed to be in a practice for the limited purpose for the training of article assistant. Practically, he is not chartered accountant in a practice. Just that firm in which he is employed can train the article employee under with him and to be registered with the ICAI for the limited purpose. Now as a topic is it non-assurance service for the chartered accountant. So this is the why chartered accountant for management consulting service. Yes, because the CA having a knowledge of the field of the accountancy, taxation, costing, finance, share market, capital market, and having a knowledge of the different industry. So that's why the CA can be a good management consultant rather than the other profession. And if I go to the definition, management services exclude these kind of the service like statutory audit or the limited reviews, internal audit, tax representation or advising tax concerning matter, tax representation with the tribunal or with the income tax authority, or acting as a liquidator, trustee, executor, administration, arbitrator or receiver. So these services come under the assurance services or in the core CA services. This will not cover under the non-assurance service. So this is not a management services. If I go to the management consulting and other services defined under section 224 of the CA Act, which these services were approved by the council. These are the 28 services. I can read all of them or the few of them. Financial management planning services, capital structure planning, working capital management, preparation of the project report, preparation of the budgets and the cash flow statement and the other project report, budgeting, inventory management, accounting system, cost control, cost method and management information, recruitment services, set up executive incentive plan for the companies, audit for the management and the operational audit, valuation services, business policies, corporate planning, organization development, like preparation of the business policy, or consulting for the organization structure and the development of the human resource, system analysis and design and computer IT services, acting as an advisor or consultant to an issue if the corporate felt any financial and the operational related issue, so then CA can act as an advisor. Investment consultant, acting as a registrar to an issuant for a transfer of the share other security, quality auditor, environmental auditor, energy auditor, and right now a social auditor also after the this new regulation, acting as a recovery consultant in a banking sector, insurance financial advisory, acting as an insolvency professional in the terms of the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Act, and administration services. So these are the 28 services approved by the council which come under the management consultancy and the other services. And this is the first services I have read the management planning and the capital structure planning. If I go to the subheading, the working capital management, inventory management, preparation of the project report and the feasibility report, management accounting system control, marketing research and studies, personal recruitment, budgeting, these will cover under the financial management planning and the capital structure planning, which is part of the management consulting. Other business occupation not permitted. If I go to the clause 11 of the CA Act, the CA engage in any business or profession other than the profession of the chartered accountant, unless permitted by the council. So no chartered accountant can do other business or occupation, the CA practice, unless approved by the council, provided that nothing contained here shall entitle a chartered accountant from being a director of the company. The chartered accountant can be a director of the company, and there is no need separate council approval for that, but not being a managing director or whole-time director. He can be a simple director only. Unless he or his any partner unless he or any of his partner is interested in such company as an auditor, he can become the director of the company, but his firm, any partner of his firm, cannot be a auditor of that company, because otherwise it will be amount of the breach of the independent. 190A, chartered accountant in practice not to engage any other business or occupation. A chartered accountant in practice shall not engage in any business or occupation other than the profession of accountancy, except with the permission granted in accordance with the resolution of the council. This is 190A is a CA Regulation Act 1988. Part-time of employment of a chartered accountant in a practice may accept, notwithstanding anything contained in Regulation 198, but subject to the control of the council. A chartered accountant in a practice may act as liquidator, trustee, executor, administration, arbitration, receiver, advisor, representative for costing, financial or taxation matter. Appointment date may be made by the central government or any other government or court of law or any other legal authority. Act as a secretary in his professional capacity, provided his employment is not on a salary come full-time basis. So 190A regulation says chartered accountant in practice not to engage in any other business profession, but 191 provide some exception, like part-time employment. A chartered accountant in practice may accept this kind of the work or the positions. The activity of the broking, underwriting, and portfolio management are not permitted to be rendered by the members in a practice, as per the explanation to the entry number 90 under section 224 management consultancy and other service of the CA Act 1949 in volume 2 of the Code of Ethics. So broking, underwriting, and portfolio management cannot be provided by the CA in practice. These are the completely prohibited service. No chartered accountant can provide these kind of the service. If any is providing any practicing unit providing these kind of the service, they are practically amount to the professional misconduct under the CA Act. Other business occupation allowed to a CA. Appendix 9 of the CA Regulation 1988. Employment under CA in practice of firm of such CA. CA can take the employment of the other CA firm. Private tutorship. This service no specific permission from authorship of the book and article. Holding of life insurance agency, but for the limited purpose of the getting a renewal commission. Like you cannot take the new policy on, you cannot solicit for the new business of the life insurance. Yeah, but before practice, if you were the insurance agent and you holding any insurance agency, so you can hold that for the renewal of the commissions. Attending classes and appearing of any examination. Holding of a public service elective office like MP, MLA, and the other position of the legislative. Honorary office bearership of the charitable, educational, or other commercial organization. Acting as a notary public, justice of the peace, special executive magistrate. Part-time tutorship under the coaching organization of the institute only. Valuation of the paper, acting as a paper setter, head examiner or moderator of any examination. Editor of the professional journal, acting as surveyor and loss assessor under the Insurance Act, acting as the recovery consultant and in the banking sector, carrying out agricultural activity. So these 14 services and the few other services, no specific permission needed from the council, and any CA can do these kind of the activity. Specific and prior approval from the council. These are the 9 services in which the specific permission required from the council. Full-time or part-time employment in a business concern, provided that member or his relative do not hold any substantial interest in that concern. Full-time or part-time employment in non-business concern. Office of managing director or whole-time director of a body, provided that member or any his relative do not hold substantial interest in such concern. interest in the family business concern or concern in which interest has been acquired as a result of the relationship and in the management of which no active part is taken. Interest in an educational institution, part-time or full-time lecturership of the course other than those relating to the institute examination. So if you see the left-hand side, institute for the institute, there is no need to take any specific permission from the council. But if you are taking any lecturership course and the exam paper setter and the part of the examination of the other body, then you need to take the prior permission from the council. Part-time or full-time tutorship under the any education institution other than the coaching organization of the institute. You can take coaching other than the institute, but need a approval from the council. Editorship of the journal other than the professional journals. Any other business or occupation for which the executive committee considered the permission may be granted. So if we see lots of services, there are no specific requirement from the council, but for a specific few specific services, there are needed a council permission to. Now we come to the third part of the this session, section 144 of the Companies Act 2013. After this section, lots of restriction to give the management service to the audit client. First, we can see what is the management consulting. Management consulting involves helping in a business institution enhance their performance by analyzing current problems and creating a strategy for the development. Organization may require the service of management consultant for various reasons. So, like apart from the audit function or the attestation function, if we are providing any tax consulting, any other consulting, and the merger acquisition consulting, or other banking consulting, any consulting which we are providing to the client, come under the non-assurance services. The integrated management consultancy approach tackles all aspects of the company running, that is through planning, account outsourcing, practically transactional service, and compliance outsourcing. If we talk about the section 141(3)(1) of the Companies Act 2013, state any person whose subsidiaries or associate company or other form of the entity is engaged as on date of the appointment in consulting and specialized service as restricted for the statutory auditor in section 144 shall be disqualified for appointment as an auditor of a company. So we will discuss in a detail regarding section 144. Section 144 says that an auditor shall provide to the company only such services those are approved by the board of director or the audit committee. So any services, any management consulting services or the non-assurance services to the audit client, first we need to take the approval from the board of director or the audit committee as may be applicable. Like listed company, you need to take the approval from the audit committee, or for the private limited company in which the audit committee are not applicable, then you can take the approval from the board of director, as the case may be, but shall not include the few service rendered directly or indirectly to the company or its holding company or its subsidiary. So section 144 talk about the few services which cannot be provided to the company and its group companies. Disqualification of the auditor under section 144 of the Companies Act. Any person acting as statutory auditor of the company rendering services under section 144 read with the subclause I subsection 3 141 shall vacate his office under section 144(4), that the vacancy will be treated as casual vacancies under section 139(8). If you are providing any non-assurance service to the audit client, so then your office will be resumed, will be assumed to be vacate as an auditor. Service not to be rendered by the auditor. Like these services are specified section 144 of the Companies Act. Accounting and bookkeeping services. The chartered accountant in a practice cannot do accounting and bookkeeping services to the audit client, and even we will discuss in a detail when we will discuss the code of ethics requirement. Also, internal audit cannot be provided to the, like if you are doing the statutory of any client, or the tax audit of any client, you cannot provide the internal audit services. Design and implementation of any financial information system, like any implementation of any IT system to preparation of the internal control of the companies, you cannot design or implementation any financial information system for the client. Actuarial services, investment advisory service, you cannot do the actuarial service for the audit client or do the investment advisory to the audit clients. Investment banking services, rendering of outsourced financial services to management services, and services as may be prescribed, like the act given power that the Minister of Corporate Affairs, by virtue of the amendment, can mention any other services which will be preview under Section 144 of the Companies Act. Now we have discussed lots of like keep relatives and the relatives. So who is the relative under Section 277 of the Companies Act? Because actually always if we see the services like no influence over the management and no relative on the higher position and the significant influence. So relative under the Company Act, father includes the stepfather, mother including the stepmother, son provided that the son including the stepson, son's wife, daughter husband, brother provided the brother includes the stepbrother, sister including the step sister. This is the just one. Even I have given the answer also that Mr. X is a practicing CA, is appointed as a tax consultant of ABC Limited, in which his father is a managing director. So is it permissible? Yes, is it permissible? Because actually a CA appointed the auditor of the company should ensure the independence with the respect of his appointment. In this case, Mr. X is a tax consultant, not a statutory auditor or a tax auditor. So he can take this position. If Mr. X appointed as a statutory auditor or tax auditor, then he could not accept this position. Punishment for non-compliance for the company, fine on the company also at least 25,000 up to the 5 lakhs. Officer of the company, 10,000 up to the 1 lakh, and the auditor 25,000 to 5 lakh rupees. And this is contravention of any willful. If the auditor will be proved by any authority that any willful default by the auditor, then he shall be punishable with the imprisonment of the term which extended to 1 year, and fine which shall not be less than 1 lakh rupees and which may extend to a 25 lakh rupees. Like if any willful default prove at the part of the auditor by any authority, then the penalty would be a more harsh, like a imprisonment and the monetary penalty up to the 25 lakh rupees. And any default under Section 147 of the Companies Act, refund of the auditor need to refund the remuneration also to the company or pay any damage due to this contravention. Now we come to the Code of Ethics requirement. We have discussed the CA Act requirement. We have discussed the Section 144 of the Companies Act. But the main aspects of the non-assurance service given under Part 4 of the Code of Ethics, and main which is started from the independence of the auditor. Like Code of Ethics state that auditor should be straightforward, honest, and sincere in his approach and his professional work. This is the definition of the independent. It further states that auditor should be independent in its objectivity. Further, there are some traits of independency of the auditor are stated by his framework. Let's see if auditor provide any service other than audit, how these traits may be occur. So there are 5 traits given under the professional standard, under the Code of Ethics: self-interest traits, self-view traits, advocacy traits, familiarity traits, intimidation traits. We will discuss each and every traits in detail. So, but just one, I would like to highlight why we are discussing here independence and all, because actually mainly we are we are discussing the non-assurance service for the practicing chartered accountant. And if practicing chartered accountant providing any non-assurance services to the audit clients, then first they need to take care of for the independence, and then they can move forward to take the decision. They will be able to provide those non-assurance service to the audit client or not. So first is a self-review threat, which occur when an auditing firm, its partner or its associate could benefit from a financial interest in an audit client. Examples: in direct financial interest, or materially significant indirectly financial interest in the client, loan or guarantee to or from the client. If you are taking any loan or any given any loan to the client or any guarantee, close business relationship with an audit client, potential employment with the client, and contingent fees for the audit engagement, like your fees based on the succession based fees. So normally in India, it's not allowed. We took the we need to agree the fixed fees for the statutory audit client. Self-review threat, which occur when during a review of any judgment or conclusion reached in a previous audit or non-audit engagement, or when a member of the audit team was previously a director or senior employment of the audit client. Instance where such threat come into a play when, like when an auditor having a recently been a director or senior officer of the company, when auditor performs service that are themselves subject to matter of the audit, like if the audit firm itself preparing the financial statement or maintaining the books of account for that client, so how can they review their own work while performing the audit? So either they can provide that services, so you cannot do review for your own work, or if you are doing that, then it will be a self-review threat. Advocacy threat, which occur when the auditor promote or is perceived to promote a client opinion to a point where people may believe that objectivity is getting compromised. Example: when an auditor deal with the share or security of the auditing company or become the client's advocate in litigation and third party dispute. Like if we are representing client for any litigation with a third party, or when an auditor itself dealing with the share and the security with the auditing company, so it will be it will be advocacy threat. The fourth one is the familiarity threat, or the self-evident and occur when auditors form relationship with the client where they end up being too sympathetic to the client's interest. This can occur in many ways: close related of the audit team working in a senior position of the client, like if you're any team member working with the any company in which the his relative on in a senior position, former partner of the audit firm being a director or senior employee of the client, long association between the specific auditor and the specific client counterpart and a relationship, acceptance of significant gift or hospitality from the client company, its director or employee. That's why the SQC1 talk about the rotation of the partner after 7 years in case of the listed company, or as per the Companies Act also, the in case of the listed company, mandatory rotation of the auditor comes, and any audit firm can appoint for the maximum of 10 years, the two term of the 5 year each. Intimidation threat, which occur when the auditor are deferred from acting objectively with an adequate degree or of professional skepticism. It can occur if the service are provided by the auditor, and thus auditor may skip the review of control applied by the auditor in capacity of the consultant. Non-assurance services to audit clients is also driven by section 600 of the Code of Ethics. Providing non-assurance services to audit client might create threat of the compliance with the fundamental principle and threat of the independence. We have discussed this. Section 141(3)(1 of the Companies Act 2013 provide a person who directly or indirectly render any service referred to in a section 144 of the companies or its holding company or subsidiary company shall not be eligible for appointment as an auditor of the company. We have already discussed. Additionally, few other provisions are also mentioned in the volume 2 of the Code of Ethics. Fees for the non-assurance service to not to exceed the audit fees. This is a member in a practice shall not accept the appointment as statutory audit of the any public sector undertaking, government company, listed company, and any other public company having a turnover of rupees 50 crore or more in a year, whereas he accept any work other than or assignment or service in regard to the same undertaking companies on a remuneration which is exceed the fees payable for carrying out the statutory audit of the same undertaking. If if any member in practicing accepting the non-assurance service of the PSU's listed company having a turnover of 50 crore rupees, so the remuneration of the non-audit services cannot exceed the fees from the statutory auditor, provided in case appointment authority regulatory body specify more restriction and more stringent provision, then we need to see that guideline, right? If the auditor appointment under the by the CAG, by the RBI, by the insurance regulatory, and they are imposing more strict provision regarding the non-assurance services for the statutory auditor. So then we need to comply those services, those provisions. Subsection 601. Like now we will discuss the non-assurance services mentioned under the Code of Ethics, which any CA can. We will discuss the restriction or the application, like what kind of the services can CA can provide, or what kind of the service CA cannot provide. So accounting and bookkeeping services comprise a broad range of the services, including preparation of the accounting record, recording transaction, payroll services, like mainly like if you are maintaining books of account or preparing of the financial statement for the client. Prohibited to provide accounting and bookkeeping, these services are prohibited to provide to the audit client, mentioned under commentary of the clause 4 of the part 1 of the second schedule of the CA Act in volume 2 of the Code of Ethics. Prohibited to provide accounting and bookkeeping services to audit client, also restricted under section 144 of the Companies Act, which we have already seen in the previous slide. So accounting and bookkeeping services, we cannot provide accounting services to the audit client, because this will create the self-review threat and also non-compliance of the section 144 of the Companies Act. Even for the CN practice, for the client which those clients are non-audit client, like even we cannot provide we cannot provide bookkeeping services which will amount to enter our role as a management. Like we can provide accounting and bookkeeping services to non-audit clients that are routine or mechanical in nature, require little or no professional judgment. Like you cannot take any decision on the behalf of the client, like what kind of the accounting policy, or what kind of the accounting policy under what kind of the other policies required for the bookkeeping, which need to be take the decision only by the management. The services which can be provided by the chartered accountant for the non-audit client. A few examples are like we can provide the clerical nature of the service, like example like preparation of the payroll calculation or report based on the client originated data for approval and payment by the client. Like if any data which already approved by and prepared by the client, so then we can make further calculation and generate further reports on that data. But we cannot say like we will prepare we are authorizing to approve the payroll process and the payment of the client on the payment process to the client on the behalf of the client. We cannot do that. recording recurring transaction for which amount are easily determinable from the source document or original data. Like recording any transaction, like if the client has already, for example, if the entity has already completed the sale transaction, already negotiated price with the customer, approvals are in place, so then we can just the CN practice can just helping out to the record of that transaction. But CNA practice or the member in a practice cannot approve those transactions. Like we cannot wear the shoes of the management. We can work just as a like a extended extended service provider, who are doing the recording of the transaction on behalf of the management. Calculation of depreciation on fixed assets, when the client determine the accounting policy and estimated of useful life and residual value. Like we can prepare the fixed asset register, we can calculate depreciation on behalf of the client, but we cannot say कि we will determine the accounting policy or we will estimate the useful life. This is examples only. Posting transaction coded by the client to the general ledger and to the trial balance, like the transaction, the sale transaction, the purchase transaction, which already happened in the past or approved by the management, we can record on the behalf of the client. Preparing financial statement based on information in the client approved trial balance and preparing related notes based on the client approved records. Like you can help them to preparing the financial statement, but on the approved all the transaction which already has been approved by the management, the trial balance already uh, approved by the management, and all the accounting policies and the method of the accounting approved by the client. So bookkeeping services, non-audit client, audit client not allowed, even in the private limited company or the listed company, not allowed under the CA Act as well as the section 144 of the company. We can provide bookkeeping services to the non-audit client, but for the limited purpose. We cannot wear the shoes of the management. We can just helping them out to record the transaction or record the transaction or do some clerical work. The second service is administration services. Administration services to audited client does not usually create receipt. These services are part of the management consultancy and other services, section 224 of the Chartered Accountant Act. Example of these services like word processing services, preparing administration and administrative or statutory form for the client. Like you are preparing the MCA forms for the client for the submission. Such form as instructed by the client, monitoring statutory filing date and advising an audit client of those date. Like lots of example here, like preparation of the TDS return, submitted to the TDS return, GST return, preparation of the GST return, because you are preparing the returns on the basis of the past transaction recorded by the client. You are not the transaction already approved by the management. You are just preparing the returns or the form on the basis of the historical data of the client and just helping out them to the administration like services. So these kind of the services are allowed under the CA Act, administration services. Valuation services, section 603. These services might create a self-review threat or advocacy threat. These services are part of the management consultancy under the CAs Act. Valuation of the share of the business, advising regarding amalgamation and the merger and acquisition. These kind of the services, audit client, if the audit client is the public interest entity, not allowed if material effect on the financial statement. In the CA Act, it's always in everywhere mentioned it is a if the material effect on the financial statement in case of the public interest entity. But if I read with the language of the Section 144 Act, the CA cannot provide valuation services to the audit client, listed audit client. Audit client that are not a public interest entity allowed, however, shall not provide if the valuation service involves a significant degree of the subjectivity. Like if you are doing any valuation which is significant, judgment are required, the valuation will have a material effect on the financial statement on which the firm will express an opinion. Like actuarial services, lots of uh, subjectivity here, lots of assumption and required, and the material effect on the financial statement, valuation of the derivative for the purpose of the recording the transaction under the IFRS 9, Ind AS 109. And if these are not applicable, then we can provide to the private limited client, but appropriate safeguard to be adopted. And these appropriate safeguard mention each and every clause of the every services, like using a professional who are not part of the audit team, or the reviewer, the having an appropriate reviewer also having who are not also part of the audit team. So like valuation services you can provide to the private limited kind, subject to these conditions, like no significant degree of subjectivity, no material effect on the financial statement, or also the team, the member of that team should not part of the audit team, and there must be one reviewer who is also not part of the audit team. The fourth services is a very important one, because actually it's a tax services, but lots of subcategories involved in these services. So tax services comprise of the broad range of the services, like tax return preparation, tax calculation for the purpose of the preparation of the financial or accounting entry, like tax calculation for the preparation of the financial statement, tax planning and the other tax advisory services, tax services involving valuations, assistance in the resolution of the tax disputes. So we will discuss each services. So first is that tax return preparation services. So this is allowed. This is allowed to the audit client as well as the non-audit client, because there is no 3/8 providing these services, because you are preparing the tax return only on the basis of the past data, only the recorded transaction, on the basis of the recorded transaction. The client has already prepared the financial statement, provide the calculation on the tax on the financial statement, compute the tax. Just they want your services to preparing the tax return. So this service can provide to the audit as well as the non-audit client, even the listed company as well as the private limited company. The second service is the tax calculation for the purpose of the preparing the accounting entry. It's created self-review threat. Like if you are providing this services to the audit client, non-audit client, you can provide these services, because actually we are discussing the topic is the non-audit or assurance service to the audit client. If the client is not your audit client, you can prepare tax calculation for the non-audit client. But if client is an audit client, then it will be amount to the create a self-review threat. You cannot audit client that are a public interest entity, not allowed if material to the financial statement. But if I read the section 144 of the Company Act, it's completely not allowed, because there is no material word used under the section 144 of the Company Act. However, in the Code of Ethics, the code mentioning the word material to the financial statement. Audit client that are not a public interest entity, we can provide after the appropriate safeguard, the same safeguard using professional who are not audit team member, having an appropriate reviewer who also not part of the audit team. So we have already discussed two such services: tax return preparation services allowed to the audit as well as the non-audit client, tax calculation services allowed to the non-audit client. In an audit client, public interest entity completely not allowed. In a private limited client, we can provide subject to the safeguard mentioned under the CA Code of Ethics. The third is a tax planning and or other tax advisory services. Comprise a broad range of the services, because actually planning or advisory is a broad word. Broad range of services such as the advice that or client how to structure its affair in a tax efficient manner, or advising on the application of a new tax laws or a tax regulation. These kind of these services might create a self review or advocacy threat to the audit client. First, I will discuss the non-audit client. For the non-audit client, these services are allowed. For an audit client, we can provide these services again to take appropriate safeguard, using a professional who are not part of the audit team, having an appropriate reviewer not involved in the providing the review of the audit work. The same, but here there is no difference between the private and public limited client. You can provide the public limited even as well as the private limited. However, shall not provide tax planning and other tax advisory service to an audit client when a effectiveness of this tax advice depend upon a particular accounting treatment or a presentation in the financial statement, and outcome will have a material effect on the financial statement on which the auditor will express an opinion. So you cannot provide any advisory or any planning services related to the accounting treatment of, like, which will affect the accounting treatment of the tax computation, which will have a material effect on the financial statement. So if you are providing tax planning or the other tax advice services to the audit client, so you need to taken care this aspects. The fifth tax service is the tax services involving valuation. This might create a self-review or advocacy threat also. Appropriate safeguard, the same, using member who are not audit team member to perform the services, having an appropriate reviewer who involved in the providing the services, review the audit work, or also for more precaution, you can take the obtaining a pre-clearance from the tax authority. Might perform only where the result of the valuation will not have a direct effect on the financial statement. So, like, you can provide the tax tax services having a involving the valuation, like a TP report, transfer pricing report, and the other valuation required under the Income Tax Act 1961. For non-audit service, non-audit client, no restriction. You can provide these services. For the audit client, either for the private limited or public limited, you can provide after taking the appropriate safeguards, or you can take the also pre-clearance from the tax authority, and your valuation will not having a direct effect on the financial statement. Assistance in the resolution of the tax dispute. This is also might create a self-review or advocacy threat, because actually, if you see, everywhere we have the act mentioned the threats of the independence. So that's why we have discussed the independence threat before starting this discussion. Appropriate safeguard to be adopted. Service are allowed using professional, again not part of the audit team, reviewer not involved in the review of the audit work, but this service shall not provide if involves acting as advocate for the audit client. You cannot act as an advocate for the audit client, or amount involved are material to the financial statement on which firm will express an opinion. So if we talk about the material, the materiality, we will calculate materiality we will depend upon the size of the client as per the standard of auditing. And for the purpose of this subsection, code does not include a tribunal, because actually for tribunal, see, so you can assist the client to resolution of any tax dispute, but again the same condition which we have already discussed in the earlier sections, you need to take safeguard of that. And for the non-audit client, it's 100% permissible services. Now come to the subsection 605, internal auditor. Internal audit. So we'll discuss the what internal audit. Even though I know this is a very generic one, but I want to read this. Monitoring of internal control, reviewing control, monitoring their operation, and recommending improvement of like internal audit we do for the management, examining financial and operating information by reviewing the economy, efficiency, and effectiveness of operating activity, including non-financial activity. Like internal audit not do the only the financial reporting part, they do the review of the operational part also, like what kind of the operations control implemented by the company, or they are effective or not, reviewing compliance with the law, regulation, and other external requirement. Probated to provide internal audit service to the audit client mentioned in the commentary of the clause 4 of the part of the second schedule of the CA Act. Probated to provide internal services under section 140 of the Companies Act. So internal audit, if you are doing any tax audit as well as a statutory audit as well as the tax audit, so you cannot, because tax audit and the internal audit, tax audit and the statutory audit come under the assurance service. So you cannot provide internal audit to those clients not allowed under the CA Act as well as the section 144 of the company. Yeah, if you are not a statutory auditor or the tax auditor of the company, then you can accept the internal audit. And internal audit, because actually lots of confusion in the mind of the members, internal audit come under the non-assurance services. Non-assurance services. Internal audit is not a assurance services, because you are doing audit for the management to find out their deficiency in the control established by the management. The subsection 6 talk about the IT services. Now the financial state, the every end, the like it is the IT word. Now even the AI word right now, not the IT word. We are go ahead. So financial accounting, even all the operation, the companies doing through the IT system only. So IT services we can provide to the non-assurance client. IT system technology include design or implementation of the hardware, software. Providing IT services to an audit client might create a self-review state, because actually you cannot give assurance to the on the software or the IT environment in which you were the party while at the time of the implementation. So to the audit client, when providing these services, ensure the client acknowledge its responsibility for established monitoring a system of the internal control. If you are providing any IT service to the client, so you can the client is responsible for establish a control, IT control. You are you cannot you are not responsible, or you are not you cannot establish control for the audit client. Client make all the management decision. Client evaluate the adequacy and the result. Client is responsible for operating the system. These services shall not provide to the public interest entity. For the private limited client, if the service involved designing or implementation, IT system that form a significant part of the internal control over financial reporting, or generate information that is significant to the client account record. So like if you are implementing any IT services which will very significant for the ICFR reporting, or generating information that is significant for the accounting record. So that accounting, that IT services you cannot provide to the audit client. The subsection 307, litigation support services. Providing certain litigation support service to an audit client might create a self-viewer or advocacy threat. So you see everywhere where we are providing services to the audit client. So only self-reviewers, advocacy threat are the main threats. Litigation support services might include activity like assisting with the document management and retrieval, acting as a witness, including an expert witness, calculating estimate damage or amount that might become receivable or payable as the result of the litigation or other legal dispute. Appropriate safeguard to be adopted if provide a litigation support service to an audit client and the service involve estimate damage or other amount that affect the financial statement on which firm will express the opinion. So if you are providing these services to the audit client, so you need to take the safeguard like the service will not include any estimation involved which will affect the financial statement on which you are opining the audit view. However, see again, litigation support services 100% permitted to the audit client, non-audit client. For audit client, you need to take the few safeguard. Legal services are defined as the service for which the individual provides the service must either have the required legal training to practice law, be admitted to practice law before the court of the India, might create a self-review advocacy threat, acting as a general counsel, a partner or employee of the firm or the network firm also shall not serve as a general counsel or the legal affair of the audit client. You cannot act as a general counsel of the any audit client. Acting in an advocacy role, a firm shall not act in an advocacy role for an audit client in resolving a dispute or litigation when the amount involved are the material to the financial statement on which the firm will express an opinion. Appropriate safeguard to be adopted when the amount involved are material. However, if I go to the section 144 and will read the detailed explanation of the section 144, so this the legal service will not allow to the audit client. Yeah, in the code of ethics, the amount involved are material and the appropriate safeguard are mentioned. But if I read the section 144, so we will not able to provide this service to the audit client. For the non-audit client, these are the permissible services. Subsection 609, recruitment services. Again, self-interest, familiarity, intimidation threat. If you are providing to the audit client. When providing services, firm shall ensure client assign the responsibility to make all management decision with respect to hiring the candidate and client make all management decision. Like if you are providing any recruitment services, like you are providing recruitment services to the client, so especially to the audit client, so you need to ensure the all decision to hiring the candidate should be part of the management only. You cannot say, I have taken the interview and this this client, this candidate is final. The management need to take the decision, and that should be ensured with the documentation or with the policy of the company. And for providing recruitment service to an audit client, the firm or the network firm shall not act as a negotiator on the client's behalf. You cannot negotiate salaries on the behalf of the client. The client's HR department or the client's senior management need to do the negotiate with the candidate. You cannot do the negotiation on the behalf of the client. A firm shall not provide a recruitment services to an audit client if the service related to the searching for an seeking out candidate. You cannot search or seek out the candidate. Undertaking the reference check of the prospective candidate with reference to the following position, like if I read the first three, that services, the first three applicable for the audit client as well as the non-audit client. Even the non-audit client, you cannot wear the shoes of the management. The management can take the decision only for the recruitment, for the final decision, and for the final salary negotiation. Even the no, you cannot act on the behalf of the management either. Even you are providing the non-audit services. Even if you are providing the recruitment service to audit client, so you cannot search or seeking out the candidate for the audit client. For the non-audit client, you can search or seeking out the candidate, or you cannot reference check. You cannot do the reference check for the prospective candidate for the director or the officer of the company or a member of the senior management. For the non-audit client, you can search candidate, you can do the background check for that candidate. But for the audit client, if your client is audit also, you are doing the auditing also for that client, you cannot search on the behalf of the client, you cannot do the background check or the reference check for the employees. The last one, subsection 16, corporate finance services. A firm shall not provide corporate finance services to the audit client that involves promoting, dealing, or underwriting the audit client share. We have already discussed, like, you cannot promote the client security. Firm shall not provide corporate finance advice to the audit client where the effectiveness of such advice depend upon a particular accounting treatment or presentation in the financial statement on which the firm will express an opinion. You cannot provide any services which involve the accounting treatment or the presentation in the financial statement. The audit team has a reasonable doubt as to the appropriateness of the related accounting treatment or the presentation under the relevant financial reporting framework. The outcome or the consequence of the advice will have a material effect on the financial statement on which the firm will express an opinion. So you cannot provide the advice in the audit team having a doubt that there must be a doubt on the appropriateness of the accounting treatment or the presentation, or the outcome or consequence of that advice will have a material effect on the financial statement. So these are the 10 services which defined under the code of ethics. These 10 services easily you can provide to the non-assurance client. These are the part of the management consultant services. But for the audited client, few are totally prohibited because of the code of ethics or as well as the section 144 of the Companies Act. Also due to the independence threat. So if I go to the end of the part of my presentation, conclusion, management services were vis-a-vis the management consulting services. If I read the section 144 of the Companies Act, he used the word management services, while the section 224 of the Chartered Accountant Act 1949 read with the regulation 190A have used the word management consulting services. Clause 11 of the part 1 of the first schedule of the Chartered Accountant 1949, which provide that a practicing member shall be deemed to be guilty of professional misconduct if engage any of the business or occupation other than the profession of the chartered accountant, unless the permitted by the council to so engage. We have already discussed what kind of the service council you can do without permission, without the specific prior approval of the council, and for what kind of the services you need to take the prior approval of the council. Also provided that nothing contained therein shall disentitle a chartered accountant from being a director of a company, but not being a managing director or full-time director, unless he or any of his partner is interested in such company as an auditor. So, like, you can become a director, not being a managing director of any company, but however, any of the partner does not have any interest of that company, or you should not be an auditor of that company. Follow that scope of the section 144 of the Company Act cannot go beyond of the section 224 and Regulation 190A in light of the provision contained in the clause 11 of the part 1 of the Schedule of Chartered Accountant 959. Like means in the last, even the if the few like if the some services allowed for the auditor under section 144 of the chartered account under section 144 of the Companies Act, however it is not allowed under the regulation of the Chartered Accountant Act, still you cannot provide those services to the any client. Like even the section 144 does not say about any services, like you can provide those services as per the section 144, but Chartered Accountant Act or the Code of Ethics does not allow to do those services, then still you can then our code will prevail, section 144, because you cannot provide those services. Yeah, the services which already mentioned that you under the section 144 Act, then it is very clear you cannot provide those services to the audit clients. But the services which were allowed by the, which will be allowed by the section 144 and not allowed by the Code of Ethics or the Chartered Accountant, you cannot provide those services. I have just jot down few example here, and I will read each and everything. The first column is the nature of service provided. Second one is the whether permitted services consulting under regulation 190 read with the section 221 to 14 of the Chartered Accountant Act. Whether management services 144 of the Companies Act, can CA be appointed as a statutory audit of the company, can CAX be appointed, continue to be a statutory audit of the company, not connected with the ABC Limited. Like, so project report, CMA, yes, in allowed under these are the management services under the Code of Ethics of the Chartered Accountant Act, management services under the section 144 Act also. CA cannot be appointed as a statutory auditor of the ABC Limited. No, if you are providing this service, you cannot appoint as a statutory auditor, but you can appoint the other other companies like PQR Limited, even the which is not connected with the ABC Limited. Like if you are providing project report services to the any client, you cannot appoint a statutory auditor of the particular company, but you cannot appoint the statutory of the other client, other company. Depositing tax on the behalf of the client, yes, these are the management services under the CA Act as well as the section 144 of the Companies Act. CA can appoint as a statutory auditor of those company? No. Other company? Yes. Filing of ITR, VAT, TDS, GST, service tax return? Yes. This is the management consulting service under the CA Act or the Code of Ethics, but however, not management service under the section 144 of the Act. That's why you can appoint a statutory audit of the ABC Limited company, even you providing these services, because it is not management service under the section 144 of the Companies Act. You can appoint a statutory audit of the ABC Limited as well as the other companies as well. Tax audit, management services under, yeah, this is tax audit come under the management services under the CA Act or the Code of Ethics, however not management services under the section 144 of the Companies Act, because as per the Companies Act, it's a audit service only. So you can appoint, if you are the tax auditor of the any company, you can appoint the statutory auditor of that particular company or the other companies as well. Portfolio management services, broking services, underwriting services, no. This because this is a profession. Even the CA cannot provide these services because this is amount to the professional misconduct. These are the management services under section 144. You cannot appoint ABC Limited auditor. You can appoint auditor of the other company, but you need to be taken in the mind. You can appoint the auditor of the other company, but you are subject to the guilty in professional misconduct under CA Act, because these services are completely not allowed to the CA in practice for the audit as well as the other clients. These are the whether a particular service falls with the management services under Section 144 of the Companies Act 2013 and the hence is restricted should be assessed on the following consideration. Whether the like we need to take the following consideration while accepting any audit, any services for the audit client. Whether the services with the preview of the management services, read Regulation 190A of the CA Act, whether by rendering such service the auditor is not performing any managerial function or making any managerial decision, whether the auditor is merely reviewing and reporting on the work done by the audit client or by a third party specialist employed by the audit client, because in such situation the third party or the audit client is the source of the financial information subject to the review of the review or audit, and the auditor will not be reviewing or auditing his or her own work. If the answer of the above three conditions are affirmative on a cumulative basis, then such service is not restricted under the Section 144 of the Companies Act. So, like if you are providing any services, you are taking any decision to provide any management consulting service to the audit client, so you need to take care of three things, like the service 190 regulation allowed, is it allowed under regulation 190A or not, whether the service should not be performing any managerial function, and you are just reviewing this you are reviewing and reporting the work done by the audit client and or third party specialist. If all the three conditions are affirmative, then you can provide management those services to the audit client. Management services, these are management consulting services. Filing VAT service tax return, whether restriction under Section 44H or not, no, because such service merely a facilitation service for a client whereby information about sales services are being furnished to the department, and such filing is not a source of the financial information subject to the review of the audit. So filing of any indirect tax or the indirect tax return, indirect taxation return are a non-assurance services. You can provide the audit client as well as the non-audit client, not restricted by the Section 144 of the Companies Act also. Filing income tax return or TDS return, not restricted under Section 144 of the Companies Act, because such a service merely a facilitation service for a client whereby information about income chargeable to tax are being furnished to the department, and such filing is not a source of the financial information subject to the review or audit. You can again provide to the non-assurance client as well as the assurance client. Filing ROC form which are not to be certified by the professional. Like if any form need to be certified by the chartered accountant in practice, then you cannot provide those services to the chartered audit client, because such a service merely a facilitation service for a client whereby information about various corporate event transaction are being furnished to the ROC for seeking various approval for updating such event, and such filing is not a source of the financial information subject to the review or audit. Or if the CA practice need to certify those form, then those services cannot to provide to the audit client, then only can provide to the non-audit client only. Issuing opinion on a tax, FAME or other issuance, yes, covered services under the Section 144 of the Act, because such service may result in such an opinion being a subsequent as a source of the financial information subject to the review or audit. If you are issuing any opinion under any tax law, FEMA, or any other act of the law, so that opinion may be will used by the client for the any accounting treatment, any disclosure requirement, like for the AS 29 for the disclosure of the contingent liability to making any provision as per the Ind AS or AS. So these services under the preview of the section 144. Preparing a CMA data, also a non-client, non-audit client allowed, audit client. This is a covered service by the section 144 because such a service would result in information which would be considered a source of the financial information subject to the review of the audit while applying analytical procedure during the audit examination. Like you, if the client having, you cannot, you need to do the lots of, you need to use the client projection for the going concern assessment, for the impairment assessment. So if you yourself preparing that data, how you will able to review that data, because it will be a self-review or advocacy thread. So this also covered under this service is covered under section 144 of the Companies Act. Representation services is depend upon the fact and circumstances of the each case. For instance, representing on income tax case before tribunal may impact assessment of the contingent liability under AS 29 or Ind AS 37. Like if you are representing your audit client in front of the income tax authority or tribunal, so maybe your own opinion, you will not, management will use your opinion while preparing the financial statement for the purpose of the providing the provision or the disclosure of the contingent liability. So it will depend upon the materiality or depend upon the case, it will cover under section 144 or not. Computation and the depositing tax on the behalf of the client. We have already discussed, we cannot compute the tax computation for the audit client. Yeah, for the non-audit client, it is allowed service. Also, this is the management consulting services under section 144 of the company. Computation or depositing tax on behalf of the client. This is repeating only. Yes, because it will be a source of the financial information, or depositing the client might not be a management service, but can be categorized as outsource financial services. Like it's not a direct management services, but we can say that outsource services mentioned under section 140 subclause G of the section 144 of G of the Companies Act. Transfer pricing study. Yes, this is the covered service under section 144 because the auditor is performing managerial function or making any managerial decision, and such a study is also source of the financial information subject to the review or audit. So if you providing transfer pricing study to the audit client, you need to take the audit committee approval and need to take all the precaution like that audit, the team should not part of the audit team and the reviewer should not part of the audit team also. Share valuation services also covered under section 144. Yes, because such a services may result in such an opinion being a subsumed as a source of the financial information subject to the review of the audit. If you are providing any, like if you are doing investment valuation or the share valuation for the audit client, for non-audit client it is allowed, but for audit client this is subject to the section 144 or the code of ethics, because you need to opine on the financial statement and your valuation report may be a client will use for the preparation of the financial statement. Personnel recruitment and selection we have already discussed. Yeah, this is also a services covered under section 144 of the Companies Act, and we have already discussed in detail. The remuneration should be finalized by the management. The final decision should be taken by the management only. You can just take helping out them to the search the candidate and all. So this so these are the services. These are 10 services we have already discussed, which we can provide to the non-audit client completely, and for the audit client few restriction under the code of ethics and the section 144 of the Companies Act. Also we have already discussed the independent the 3/8 and the services provided by the CN practice, which need to be a general services already approved by the council, and the few services which specific approval required by the council. So this is all from my side, and I'm happy to answer any question in the mind. Ashish ji, any?
Yes, sir. This is CA Mohit Jain, Treasurer of Kishangarh branch. Sir, I have some questions on the behalf of the members who had joined the webinar. Shall we start it?
Yeah. And
yes, sir.
Yeah, Ashish ji will help me out also that during this process. Yeah, please.
No issue.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely, sir. Sir, first question is, how can we decide whether a function is an administrative function if the particular example is not given in the code of ethics?
Sir, like you need to. That's why we have discussed the threats, advocacy threats. That what kind self-review threat, advocacy threat. So you need to find first analyze what kind of the threat you will face while providing that services. Then you will come to the conclusion, because actually I cannot straightforward the answer. Yeah, but you need to first evaluate the threat, and you can if you are an auditor, if you are in a if not an auditor, then easily you can provide if it is allowed by the council. If you're an auditor, then you need to first apply the independence like independence check and the other threats, then you can provide these services or not. Ashish ji,
Okay.
you would like to add anything?
No, sir, it's fine.
Yeah.
Because as you have, sir, already explained that administrative services are kind of clerical services which are routine or mechanical in nature.
Yeah.
So the member can take his own call whether this falls under administrative services and can accordingly decide. Some examples have been given in Code of Ethics. Others he may decide on its own.
Yes, sir. Yeah,
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you, sir. Next question is, if I'm a statutory auditor of a PSU, can I provide general taxation advice to the entity? We were discussing the same just a few minutes ago, I think so.
Yeah,
I'll
general
update it
taxation.
again.
Sir, general taxation, like taxation services, we have already discussed in detail, right? Like tax preparation, tax return services we can provide, right? For the other litigation services, we need to see like what kind of the litigation services we are providing. Computation of the taxation we cannot, because we are talking about the PSU. The PSU must be a listed entity, right? And yeah, the one more regulation we have already discussed. If the remuneration or if the turnover of the 50 exceed the 50 crore rupees and 1 crore threshold limit was there, and audit the service of that services cannot be exceed from the audit fees. Cannot or like the fees from the that services should not exceed the audit fees.
Okay, sir. The third question is, Companies Act provide management services under Section 144. Under Code of Ethics, it prescribes management responsibilities. Whether these are same?
Sir, we have already discussed in my last slide what kind of what kind of the difference, because actually companies that only give the 9 services and mention the other services example. But if you read the Code of Ethics, they have clearly mentioned what kind of the services come under the preview of the management consulting and other management consulting. What kind of the services CA in practice can provide, or any chartered accountant cannot provide, like the portfolio management service and other service cannot be provided by even your auditor or not auditor or auditing of that entity. So if I talk about the Code of Ethics are in a given more detailed definition and the given more detailed description of the service as compared with the Section 144 of the Company Act. Ashish ji, can you add something on that?
So this management services which are given in 144 of Code of Ethics and of Companies Act, these are still not been prescribed by the government.
By the
And
government.
and the management responsibilities which are mentioned in this volume 1 of Code of Ethics, those are kind of some activities rather than full-fledged services. For example, authorizing transactions and all these. So I think that uh, it that those pertain to some activities rather than services, because management responsibilities is taking note mainly of the activities and not the services.
Okay.
Yes.
Mohit ji, can we take next
Yes,
one?
sir. Yes, sir, sure. Whether a statutory auditor can be an insolvency professional of the same entity? Did you get it?
Sir, no, not allowed under Section 144 Act.
Okay. And the last question, sir. When I am involved in providing IT services to a client and subsequently the client becomes an audit client, what safeguard I will require?
Yeah. Very good question, sir. Sir, while accepting the audit, you need to evaluate that the IT services which you have already provided in the past for the particular year, you like first there is two things. First, you need to see after appointing as an auditor, you will review your own work which you have already provided to the client. If this kind of the scenario, then you cannot accept statutory audit of that particular year, right? Like if you are reviewing your own work, like if or the first and all, you need to leave that services prior to the appointment of the statutory audit. And even if you are not doing IT service now, but your audit period relate to that particular year in which you have provided the IT services, and you have provided that kind of the IT services which will impact the financial statement of the company, internal control over financial reporting of the company. So you cannot give the opinion on that particular year. So you need to evaluate what kind of the IT services you have provided. So because you cannot give opinion on the consulting services in which you were part.
Is there any threshold limit for that, or we had not to accept such kind of work to judge your own work?
Sir, actually, for the independence, there is no materiality threshold. Like, yeah. But we need to evaluate case to case basis. Like what kind of the services we have provided, what kind of the fees we have taken. Sometimes the very immaterial fees for the very immaterial services. So it's depend upon the case to case basis. Yeah, but in a absolute term, we cannot opinion on the own work. We cannot give opinion on his own. No CA can opine on his own work.
Yes, sir. The basic agenda is that only, that we should not opine on our own work.
Yeah.
The main scenario, the main point of view is that the crux is that.
If say I have implemented the IT system, I have prepared the SOP for that client. I have prepared the internal control financial metrics for that particular client. Or now I have appointed the statutory audit of that particular year. So how can I review the work which I have implemented? I have prepared the metrics. I have prepared the control. I have prepared the process map. How can I provide the opinion on my own work?
Perfectly, sir. Perfect. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you for your explanation and answering all the questions very calmly. Thank you. It's over to you, MOC.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
May I request Navneet ji to please provide a vote of thanks on the behalf of Kishangarh branch of ICAI. Navneet ji, it's your mute. You are on mute, Navneet ji. Yes, sir.
Thank you. I, CA Navneet Kumar Rathi, Vice Chairman of the Kishangarh Branch Management Committee of CIRC of the ICAI, feel honored and privileged to extend this vote of thanks on behalf of the Ethical Standard Board and on my own behalf. First and foremost, I would like to express our profound gratitude to our esteemed guest speaker, CA Himanshu Agrawal sir, who is also blessed with doctorate Upadhi. We are truly grateful that you took time out of your busy schedule to share your expertise with us. I would also like to take this opportunity to extend a heartfelt thanks to the Ethical Standard Board for organizing this insightful session. A special note of appreciation goes to our chairman, Shri Anuj Goyal sir, a cheering personality who tirelessly champions of the cause of the profession and professionals. Your leadership and commitment continue to inspire us all. Ye Himanshu Agrawal's sir sessions on non-assurance services of CAs was enlightening and impactful. This insight is not only timely but essential in helping us better navigate handling such non-assurance services. I also want to extend a heartfelt thank you to all the participants for your attentive listening and active involvement of my branch committee. Your engagement has made this session more fruitful. With that, I would like to conclude by once again thanking CA Himanshu Agrawal sir for his valuable contributions and wishing everyone continued success in their endeavors. Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Thanks to all of you. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Ashish ji, we are ending now.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Please.
Yeah,
Please.
thank you.